Hi, welcome to I Can Do That. I'm Jill, a home influencer who's been renovating homes with my husband Mike for 10 years. Together, we've zigzagged across the country with the Coast Guard, renovating 6 homes and counting, and making more trips to the hardware store than we can count. On I Can Do That, we'll be revisiting one of our past DIY projects each week and asking ourselves the big question, would we do it again? So if you've ever looked at a DIY project and thought, I can do that, this podcast is for you. Subscribe now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of I Can Do That. I'm Jill.
And I'm Mike, and we are so excited to be kicking this off.
So the idea for this podcast came, Mike and I have been married 10 years this year. We've been renovating houses for a good 10 years, a little bit more than that. We've lived in a lot of houses, and we've just kind of been looking back at each one and talking about it.
Yeah, I recently retired from the Coast Guard, so we moved a lot every 2 to 3 years. So we've lived in 6 or 7, I think, houses. And with every move, we took on some kind of home project.
Yeah, I think our strategy with the military lifestyle was to buy a house, like the ugliest house on the best street, and while we were stationed there, kind of renovate it, do as much as we could ourselves, and then sell it and hopefully make money each time, and then just keep rinsing and repeating. So I thought it'd be fun to go through all the projects that we've done with all of our houses. I think we've had like 6 different houses that we've owned. We've had a couple apartments thrown in there too. And we can go project by project and kind of ask ourselves, would we do that again or would we not?
Because we get asked a lot from friends and family and people we meet, how we did stuff or why we did stuff. And we figured maybe some of the listeners are in a home that needs a little bit of DIY and are wondering about trying to attempt some of those projects.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of folks right now are also in a house that maybe they bought in 2020 and they didn't think it would be their forever house, but maybe now it's looking like they're going to be there for a little bit longer than they thought. So how can you kind of do some projects around your house yourself to kind of make it feel a little bit more like a forever home? Okay, so let's start at the beginning, Mike.
Yeah, right at the beginning. So our first house together when we moved to New Orleans when I was stationed down there.
Right. You were stationed in New Orleans. We had looked in houses in Metairie and New Orleans, and we ended up in Slidell, Louisiana, which is across Lake Pontchartrain. If you're familiar with New Orleans, how long was your commute across that lake? It is gigantic.
Yeah, it was about 30 miles, I think.
It's huge.
The commute. Yeah, it was, in hindsight, not the best choice.
No,
where
not the best. But that house was so pretty. I think when our realtor took us there, I was like, I'm never going back to houses in New Orleans. Great curb appeal. It had moldings. It had really tall ceilings in the living room. It wasn't big. It wasn't the biggest house we've ever owned, but it was just perfect for that time for us.
Yeah, it looked big, because it was all one floor. And yeah, tall ceilings in the living room. I think they were like 18, maybe 20-foot ceilings in the living room.
Yeah, we painted those walls.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I remember painting those walls.
Yeah, it was probably also the nicest house we've ever owned. It didn't need that much.
Yeah, it was move-in ready.
Yeah, that's probably why I liked it. It was just like move-in ready. That was also a weird time for me. I was working at Penn State and then we moved to Louisiana. I was doing a little bit of freelance work in marketing, but not that much. And I was trying to find a job in New Orleans, and it was a really tough job market. So I started furniture flipping. Do you remember those days?
Yeah, that was one of your first in many businesses. So let's tell everyone about this. So we would go to thrift stores or Facebook Marketplace, maybe even Craigslist back then.
It was some Craigslist days, yeah.
And we would look for furniture like dressers, tables, china cabinets.
Did a lot of china cabinets.
Yeah, we did a lot of china cabinets, tables, dressers. And we would go to some sketchy places driving around town buying these for pretty cheap, and then Jill would paint them and we would resell
Yeah,
them.
I was painting the furniture. There was this place, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like this thrift store by the
Junk store.
junk store. It was run by this guy who, the best way I could describe him is like if Eminem had his own thrift store. That's kind of like the vibe he gave off. He was very nice. He would help me carry the dressers out to my car, but we would buy stuff there. We would buy stuff like from neighbors. God, well, there was this one time, I think it was from Facebook, I saw somebody selling a dresser for dirt cheap. And they were like, come get it. It's at our apartment. And so remember we went, it was like kind of late at night. It was starting to get dark. And they were like, oh yeah, well, I forgot to tell you, but like we don't have any electricity in the apartment. And so it's going to be a little dark in there. And I remember looking at you like, are we about to die?
Yep, murdered. But let's also a disclaimer that we didn't have any kids at this
Right.
point.
No
So
kids were with us.
our capacity for risk taking was a little higher then. But yeah, we went into these complete strangers' apartments in this weird part of town at night in the dark and carried their dresser out, and then found out that it didn't fit in our car.
No, I forgot it. Oh my God, we put it on the roof and like held on for dear life, basically.
Yeah.
Put our flashers on.
Drove back home with our arms out the windows holding this dresser on the roof of our car. Fortunately, it was only a mile or so, but
Oh my God. Okay.
times.
So anyway, that sets the tone because I was a chalk paint fiend in that era. I love chalk paint. I would mix up my own. That's how deep I was into that hobby. I would go and I would order, it's called calcium carbonate. It's like a powdery substance. And I would order that on Amazon and just mix it into regular old latex paint. And it would turn it into chalk paint. And if you're like trying to recreate the recipe at home, I'm going to get a little technical here, but you just pour a calcium carbonate into the paint until it's the consistency of a Wendy's Frosty. So just go with that and you're going to be golden. But anyway, so I was doing that with all the dressers and I think I was getting a little bit of an ego. I'm like, well, what else can I paint? Like I can do anything now. And I looked at our kitchen and do you remember what that kitchen looked like before?
yeah. So we mentioned before the house was so pretty, and it was, except for the kitchen. The kitchen stuck out like a sore thumb. So we had those old laminate countertops that are, you know, if you squint really hard and maybe turn your head
Had a couple
sideways
wines.
and had a couple of glasses of wine, they look like stone, but they were laminate. And then the cabinets themselves were very high quality, but they were that 90s oak color.
Glorious. Yeah. And the rest of the house was like white, light grays. And then you just had bright orange cabinetry. But they were still in like decent shape. I will say that. Like the reason we opted to do what we did is because they were in good condition. They just were the wrong color for the
Well,
house.
that, and at that point, we didn't have the budget to
Yeah.
completely replace the kitchen.
Right. So I said, why don't we chalk paint our kitchen cabinets, Mike? I've done everything. I've done dressers, china cabinets, tables. So I started out mixing up my Wendy's Frosty paint
Into a solo cup.
into a solo cup, which was my vessel of choice back. I still actually like to paint from a solo cup. It's easy to hold. It's great for trim work. Okay, side note there. But yeah, we were on a budget, so we decided to chalk paint. So if you are going to paint your cabinets, this is what we did. This is perhaps not what we would do this go around, but this is what we did. Okay, judgment free zone here.
All right, so the first thing with kind of with any painting project, but with this one for sure, was we took all the cabinet doors off and took all the drawers out of the cabinets, and we took all the hardware, the handles, the hinges, everything. Took all that out and laid all the doors and drawers out on sawhorses in our garage.
As one does in Louisiana with the heat and no AC in that garage. Then we scrub them down really good with hot soapy water. So I think I just use like a couple drops of Dawn in a hot bucket. But if you're doing this, you probably want to buy like a degreasing spray, especially for like the cabinet doors near your stove. Those tend to get really greasy, but that's not what we did. Just regular old Dawn.
You can buy that degreaser at any, home improvement store, really lots of places. So the next thing, and this is going to sound wrong, and it felt a little wrong at the time, but we didn't sand anything.
No, but that's because we were doing the chalk paint. And the beauty of chalk paint was that you didn't have to sand the pieces. For whatever reason, the magic of the chalk, it will adhere to the doors without priming.
And it did. And even though it does, and it did then, but I think if we were going to do it again, even if we were using chalk paint again, I would probably want to sand them, prime them, probably sand it again, and put a couple coats of paint and a polyurethane or something on top to protect it.
Yeah.
To make it last longer.
That's probably what we should have done. Well, okay. So then we painted all the doors and all the drawer fronts in the garage. Then we went back into that kitchen, and I remember I have a picture of you standing on top of those laminate countertops, painting the cabinets frames.
I mean, again, we said the ceilings were like 18, 20 feet tall. So our cabinets, the upper cabinets were like the 40-inch.
They were big.
Like, I don't think I could reach the top shelves in those cabinets. So you surely couldn't.
No. Maybe that's why we have no more upper cabinets. Oh man. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, we did that. And then with chalk paint, you didn't use polyurethane. You would seal them with this wax. And do you remember that little like tin it would come in?
Yeah, it came like a little tin, like a bigger version of like shoe polish. And you would put it on with a brush and make little circle swirlies, and you would start out,
Circle swirl. We're getting technical.
Yeah, technical term, circle swirlies. When you first put it on, you could see where the wax was, but as you buffed it in, it would get clear, and even if you put enough on, even shiny in some places.
It was a nice finish. It felt like very smooth when you're done with it. And the color we went with, I think it was like a French gray. French linen, something like that.
Something that was trendy back in the 2010s.
Yeah, I know. And everybody was doing gray, but the house was all very white and gray and kind of French provincial. So it felt like the right choice for that. We probably maybe should have done just plain white, but I don't know. I thought at the end of it was a vast improvement over the orangey.
It looked
yellow.
great, really.
Yeah. And it didn't cost much either. It was an relatively easy DIY. It cost us maybe like $60, $70.
Just took a little bit of time, but a couple of weekends.
We didn't have kids, so we didn't have anything else to do. So, it was perfectly fine. Now, did it stand the test of time? Did it, well, not design-wise, but how durable was it?
Right.
Well, I would say it was there for 3 years. We'll get more into that. But when I looked at it after 3 years, around some of the knobs, maybe the cabinets that you use the most, it was starting to chip away a little bit. It wasn't an awful condition, but if I had paid for that to be done, I would have been upset with the quality after 3 years.
I think that gets back to the prep work that we didn't really do. If we had sanded and things like that, maybe it would have held up a little bit better. If
you're going on this journey and considering painting your cabinets, I would recommend this Facebook group. I forget what it's exactly called, but I was in there for like 2-3 years, and it's like painting kitchen cabinets group, something like this, where all we talk about is how to paint your kitchen cabinet. It's a very niche group, but they will go through all the steps in there. And it is pretty tedious. You have to sand, prime, sand again, paint. Some people paint and then sand it a little bit more, and you just keep going over and over and over it.
It's a very labor-intensive process.
It is. So then there's folks in there who are like, screw that.
Don't paint it.
No, they're like, I'm going to hire a professional. And even some of those folks who hire the professionals to come in with the spray gun, they were having wear and tear issues after even just a few months. So I don't know what the answer is, but let's get to the final verdict. Ooh. Here's the question. So, on each one of our episodes, at the end, we're going to ask ourselves, would we do it again? So, Mike, would you paint your kitchen cabinets again?
Not with chalk paint.
Well, certainly no. Certainly no. Okay, my verdict is that I would also not paint cabinets again. I don't even think I would hire somebody to paint cabinets again just because of our experience with the durability and then seeing my Facebook group followers, fellow comrades, and what they've gone through.
I think also with our experiences since then, we have some other solutions that we think are better that we'll have some episodes on in the future. But it can be, painting your cabinets can be a good short-term thing. Like if you're planning on doing a full kitchen renovation a couple of years down the line, but you don't have the budget to do it right now, or you have some other things to do first, but you just absolutely can't stand those honey oak cabinets that are in your kitchen right now.
Right.
You could paint them and give yourself a couple of years before you're ready to tackle the full thing.
I think it can buy you some time for sure. And it's an inexpensive way to really freshen up a space, which is often the case with paint. It can really just change an entire room for relatively inexpensive price. But yeah, longer term, probably the better thing to do, you could consider just getting new cabinet fronts, which is something we've done in the past. Maybe even just full gutting it for an IKEA kitchen. But anyway, it's one of those DIY projects that if you do take on, it's going to teach you a lot about DIY. Just happens to be one that we would not repeat. It's time for the Honeydew Hotline, where you DM, email, or maybe just corner us at the school pickup line, and we're going to do our best to help you with your latest DIY dilemma. Big or small, if it's on your to-do list, we're talking about it. So we're going to tackle one question a week from our listeners, whether it's, should I paint my cabinets, or can I actually build a pergola myself? You can, but that's where we come in. So grab your tool belt or maybe just your coffee and let's dig in. Okay, Mike, our first question comes from a follower, Allison in Norfolk. She's getting ready to list her house and she feels like her kitchen is going to hold her back. She doesn't have a huge budget, so what are some things that she can do to improve it?
This is a great question.
Common. Kitchens and baths sell homes, so I think she's right to really kind of hone in on this kitchen. And we've been in this position before where we didn't have enough for new counters or it just wasn't right to invest it in that house. So let's go through maybe some things that are, like, I'm not going to say a given, but like some things that are easy to do that maybe you should do. Like I'm going to start with...
don't cost a lot of money.
Right. I'm going to start with decluttering the kitchen. Obviously, you know, a lot of people are in your kitchen every single day. It's like a heavily used room in your home. Sometimes, and we fall victim to this, all the small appliances are on the countertops. The kids come home from school, they're throwing backpacks, homework on there. So I would say take all small appliances off the counters.
Cereal boxes or, containers of the food that you use like every day because it's convenient.
Yeah, I would take all that out and I would maybe just put like a bowl of lemons, a bowl of oranges, whenever you go to list, whenever you have an open house, something super, super fresh. And like, that's pretty much it. I would start with decluttering. What else do you think?
I think too, you want to depersonalize the space. So if you have brightly painted walls or something like that in your kitchen, you want to tone those down, maybe go with a nice neutral.
That can really brighten up the space too, just making sure it's like a bright white, not like glaringly bright. I like Swiss Coffee by Benjamin Moore. It's like a nice creamy white and that can brighten up the whole space. I think also changing out the knobs. We did that with one of our kitchens and that made a huge impact too. Just going and looking at your knobs. Are they worn? Are they tarnishing? And just getting something fresh in there. That's an easy thing you can do with just a screwdriver. I'm also going to say lighting. If you have like a boob light in there.
or the old school fluorescent tubes.
Oh, we've had that. Old school fluorescent tubes. We also once added under cabinet lighting. We've done that with a couple, well, like two, maybe I'm gonna say maybe all of our kitchens that had upper cabinets. But you can get like these LED strip lights on Amazon. Maybe I'll link them in the show notes. Look at that. We've done that before, and that made a huge difference to that small kitchen we had in
Yeah,
Virginia.
or even the battery powered
The ones that like stick
LEDs
up
that just
there.
like stick on the bottom and have the
Yeah,
little remote control.
yeah,
Those are super easy.
those are cool. She can maybe look at changing out her kitchen faucet, like ones that are touchless or ones that are all incorporated. They have the pull down faucet. Something I love, like adding a wow factor to the kitchen. And a faucet's kind of an easy way to do that. We also added one time, it was like a very small kitchen, and we added one of those ovens that's a double oven. And it was just like a nice little wow factor. It really didn't cost much more than upgrading a regular oven. But I know that's really not like what she's talking about, but just having something that people can latch on to when they come through your house and they kind of, we always like named the house when we would walk through it. So that could be like, oh, the house with the cool faucet. You kind of want to have something that they latch onto and makes you stand out.
You brought up a good point though with appliances. I do think if your appliances are very old,
Yeah.
you may want to bite the bullet and upgrade the appliance package.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like white or black versus stainless steel. I'm talking about like if like our house that we bought in Williamsburg when and it
Oh
was
gosh.
the
Yeah.
original kitchen from the late 1970s with the original oven with the little turn dials for the temperature gauge. If that's your kitchen, which no judgment, like that, people there's still a
Obviously, it
lot.
was still working.
Yeah, a lot. That stuff was made great and it works great. But buyers today in this competitive market, you're gonna turn a good portion of them off if that's what they see in your
Yeah.
kitchen. So
Yeah.
you might want to consider that if that's your
The other nice
scenario.
thing about upgrading the appliances is that that's something that if they want to change the countertops, if they want to change the cabinets, they can reuse those new appliances that you invested in.
Yeah, they don't feel like they're redoing their entire kitchen at that point.
Well, and if you went ahead and put nice countertops on old cabinets, like they're going to have to upgrade those cabinets and then you've lost all those counters. So I would say maybe if you can swing new appliances, at least a new range, new microwave, maybe they're bringing their fridge from their last house. I think that would be where I would put, if you had a big chunk of money to invest, that's where I would probably put it. All right. Well, I think that answers it today. We are also going to accept some new questions for next week. They can go to Classically Jill and look for the latest post about the podcast and then just comment below that or DM me at Classically Jill. Maybe put podcast in big bold letters so it doesn't get lost. But we'll figure that out, Mike. Maybe you can hit that up. Okay, so that was our very first big project and really one that kicked off our DIY journey. I think after that kitchen project, we got the bug.
Felt like we could do anything.
Yeah. So on our next episode, we're going to continue on with the New Orleans house, with some of our DIY projects in that kitchen. You know which one I'm talking about, Mike. It's one you had a very hands-on experience with.
Oh, yeah.
The kitchen backsplash.
Yeah, that was humbling. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos.
As one does.
Yeah.
As one does.
As one does. And came away being like, oh yeah, I can do that. How hard can it be?
Oh yeah, famous last words. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you like this episode, we'd love if you shared it or left a review or shared it with a fellow DIYer.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. And remember, if you're thinking, I could do that, maybe you shouldn't.